Hi everyone, Pat with QSA here,
And Selena?
and we just wanted to make a quick video here to introduce a phone interview that we had with a Jorge Borrego. He works for the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and he deals with educational policies from K through 12. So we wanted to get his perspective on the school voucher debate. What did you think?
I thought it was good. He's also does charter school, so he was definitely had points of views for charter school, public school, and
Right.
private school. So it was a good conversation. Learned some new things.
Yeah, we thought he was a great source to get information. He's pro school voucher, so as promised on this platform, we wanted to introduce different perspectives regarding the school voucher debate. So take a look. Let us know what you think. Comment, like, subscribe, and share.
Thanks.
Uh, the person with the QSA?
Yes. Hi, is this Mr. Borrego?
It is.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Good. So, are you Patricia?
Yes. Well, I only get called my full Spanish name by my mother, but yes.
Okay. So, what should I guess if it's not, what do you go by if it's not Patricia?
Oh, I usually go by Pat as my nickname.
Pat. Okay, Pat. Okay.
No, you're good. You're good, Mr. Borrego. I really appreciate taking the time out of your busy day to follow up and let us interview. I'm here with my colleague, Selena. She's also on the line.
Hi, and happy World Down Syndrome Day.
Thank you. Yes. No, I'm actually glad that you said that. We have our I do work with the Down Syndrome Association in College Station, and we have our gala tomorrow, so
Nice.
it's actually really great. And to
Yeah,
be
I
able
saw
to
that. I saw that. I figured you'd be busy today. So my son, I've got a 4-year-old with Down syndrome.
awesome.
So we stay busy with this Down Syndrome Association of South Texas.
Great.
So,
Yes. No, that's a great org. Yeah, they're really good.
Now, Jorge, I hope you don't mind if we are recording this phone call so we can maybe play back some of what we talked about to our audience. Is that okay?
Okay. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And like I said, I appreciate you calling us because I've been trying to get a hold of a few state reps in regards to the school voucher proposal and all the debate going on with that. I did have an opportunity to speak to House State Rep Ray Lopez not too long ago with a rally they had here in San Antonio. So I just wanted to get ask a few questions and get your take from the other side. So again, thank you again. I know that you work for the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Can you elaborate a little bit as to what exactly you do in your role?
Yes, I'm the education policy director, and so my job is to research different policy initiatives regarding K-12 education and workforce development. And one of those areas in particular is educational school choice. Other things that I work on is the charter school expansion, discipline within the classroom, making sure that there's additional pathways to success, whether that's in school or out of school, or within a 4-year track university or a more technical career-oriented track.
So with all the work that you've been doing in your role, with all the debate surrounding school vouchers, I wanted to ask your thoughts in regards to, there's two separate bills. You have the HB3 and the SB2. And a lot of the talk from the people that I spoke with who are against vouchers keep harping on that the vouchers wouldn't be enough to cover tuition, much less additional resources and expenses that students may need. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'd say that is demonstrably false. That when we look at the average the average tuition for whether it's elementary, middle school, or high school, the average tuition goes, depending by region, between $8,000 to just shy of $9,800. So a ESA amount of $10,200, like it would be under House Bill 3, would cover tuition and leave you enough funds to cover things like uniforms.
And supplies and such.
Yes. Now, I think where the counterpoint that a lot of opponents tend to go for is they tend to select the most expensive private schools that they could find in their area. We're talking about, something. It'd be like if you're to put it in comparison. It's like if you say that the average tuition for a Texas university is $8,000 a semester, but then you throw in SMU in there and say, well, you can't do that with a Pell Grant because a Pell Grant only covers, X amount of dollars, so you can't go to SMU with that kind of money, and so therefore the Pell Grant program is awful. I've never heard anyone say that. And as a Pell Grant recipient, I would completely disagree that is a terrible line of argument.
Okay. On that note, can you shed some more differences between the two bills? And if you can maybe clarify as to which one you're proposing most. It looks like HB3 allows for a little bit more flexibility when it comes to funding.
So both bills are, CPPF officially we've supported both pieces of legislation, both the Senate version and the House version. There are differences. So institutionally, we support both bills. Both of them would create the largest day one program in the country's history. We're talking about a initial launch of about 100,000 students. But the differences, really, they're numerical differences. So the House version ties the ESA funding to average daily attendance, right? So it ties it basically to the state funding for a public school student. So anytime the state increases the public school amount, the ESA amount would increase comparably. So that puts it at about $10,200. I think the fiscal note actually puts it at $10,330 for fiscal year 2027, versus the Senate, which just sets it at a flat $10,000. Other changes is that the House wanted to include the cost for things like breakfast and lunch as an allowable expense. The Senate decided not to go down that route, and they also added more things on the technology aspect of it. The Senate did some amendments on the floor that removed the ability for general education students to attend virtual schools, and those are the big substantive changes those are the big substantive changes between the differences.
So just to clarify, you're good with either one making it?
Well, they both have to make it.
Yes.
Well, we institutionally support both vehicles. Both of them are if we didn't have HB3, SB2 would have been the strongest bill proposed by any legislature in Texas. It is historically the best vehicle when you compare it to years past. HB3, we're cutting hairs here. It's just marginally better in our institution, in our opinion, because it does tie it to the amount of funding that that students would get in the public school space, right? So both of them don't touch public school dollars, but one does say if we increase the amount of funding for public school students, like we will for under HB2 for the school finance bill, when that goes into effect and and public school students get a big increase in how much money the state gives them, ESA students would also get a increase.
An increase. Okay. If the bill passes, I mean either or, it looks like it's going that route. How do you ease the concern of those who think that it is a major step towards privatizing education, and where would that leave the public education system?
Well, I'd say that you look at all the other 33 other states that have passed school choice programs across the country. You know, the majority of states have some version of school choice, and none of these fears that have been proclaimed or these scenarios have played out. I mean, we look at Arizona, who's had a universal school choice program. We're the first to go fully universal. They still have high school sports and football, and their educational system isn't crumbling like the fears that some opponents are saying. Or Florida, who's had low income school choice since the early 2000s, so for over 20 years. Those low income schools are still performing very well, and in fact they've improved their performance over the 2-year period. So as far as the educational system is, Texas will always fund its public schools and will always put all students in a situation to succeed.
Thank you. On that note as well, I just wanted to ask you one more question. I'm going to kick it off to my colleague, but you're out in public, Jorge, and someone says to you, private schools and vouchers are only for the rich. What do you say? How do you respond to that?
Well, I'd say that's demonstrably false. Looking at Arizona, the first state that went fully universal. The average recipient of an ESA program there is within the middle class income range. And then you look at the students who are using it, right? 56% of them, the majority of program recipients came from public schools to begin with. So they're not this caricature of a wealthy family, getting first in line is just not possible. And even to go one step further, both the House and Senate versions put students with disabilities and low-income students first in line.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm going to kick it off to my colleague, Selena. Again, since this is close to home to her because she has a child with Down syndrome, she's got a few questions for you.
Okay.
So obviously the number one concern for me is I understand that students with disabilities are being prioritized. However, I have a daughter that doesn't have special needs, and I had her in private school, but I also know that they did not have the accommodations to be able to provide what I would need for my son, such as like the OT, PT, and ST, like that public schools have. So what would be the incentive? Like, what are the advantages of somebody who does have a special education student?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, no. So in this case, this is where the House version is better, right, than the Senate, in that the Senate version only added an extra $2,000 for students with disabilities if you have an IEP attached to it. The House version says all the extra money that you'd be entitled to receive under our weighted our funding program will also transfer over. So if, let's say, for simplicity, the state average daily attendance funding rate is $10,300, but for a student with Down syndrome, they fund at $16,000 or $17,000. You'll receive that additional portion. You'll receive that extra, let's just say $7,000 to go for that, and that could help provide for those extra services that you might not see at the school that you want to put your child in might not receive. Now when you look at the percentage breakdown between students the populations who are attending both public and private schools. So and Chairman Buckley does a really good job of talking about this. In the public school space, 8% of students have a disability. But in the private school space, we're looking at 12%. So there is some nuance on how that breaks down, but there is a higher, private schools are servicing a higher percentage of public school of students with disabilities when you compare them to their overall class size.
Really? Because I know some parents that have had their kids in private school, and they had a child with Down syndrome, and their child even though they have siblings in the school, was actually they've been turned away. I know a couple of families because they didn't have the services needed at the private school for their child. So it's interesting to me that you're telling me that they actually have a bigger percentage than public school with students
Right.
with disabilities.
I mean, we're talking about students with disabilities, and disabilities, all the different kinds of disabilities that fall under an IEP are varied right now. You're talking about specifically with students with Down syndrome, which
Down syndrome doesn't even cover in an IEP. Actually, Down syndrome alone doesn't get them in an IEP by itself. Did you know that? Only like autism does, but not Down syndrome.
that is.
I just learned that.
Yeah. No, I mean, when we look at all the members that I've served with, I mean, all of them have an IEP attached. So that is, I'd say that would be interesting.
So it was very interesting to me, which is why.
Yeah.
So then my question is, if all you guys are determining with disability is if they have an IEP, what is regulating these IEPs? Because I feel like there's been a lot more usage of IEPs than before. Like, how is this, I guess, and I think that's a big argument too, is I think a lot of people are wondering is how is accountability going to come into place for these private schools accepting, students? And again, I think the IEP regulations would kind of also, I guess, how do we do accountability?
So the ESA follows the language that is prescribed under IDEA for when it comes to getting your evaluation. So if your child is going to be evaluated in the public school space, right, all it is reiterating that same law that's already required federally, which is if your child has a disability, the school district already has to provide them with an evaluation, right? That's federal law, and that they actually get funding for that by the feds to do that service. This just reiterates that exact same law, saying that hey, even if you're already required to, any child that is of school age can receive an evaluation by your school district. This is just restating it, saying that it's also state law as well on top of the federal law. So it's a mirror of what's going on federally.
Okay. No, I mean, I get it. You provided clarification. It's off of the IEP. So if there's an IEP attached, then at that point, you're considered a priority because you've got a student with a learning disability. Is that correct? Was I grasping that part right?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, that answers some questions for me. So I appreciate that. I think that was my biggest question was, how would this benefit somebody in my situation? Which clearly I like private schools. I sent my daughter there before this voucher thing. But I was just curious as to, because I know that I'm switching to public with my son.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think that's also part of the decision making, ability to want to give every family to make, right. I'm not, like, my wife's a public school teacher. Her whole entire family works in public education. I'm not anti-public education whatsoever. And it's just we want to be able to give parents the ability to make that decision on what is best for each individual child. One child might thrive in a public school setting. One might thrive in a homeschool setting. One might thrive in a private school setting, right? We just want to make sure that income alone isn't the deciding factor on whether a parent can put a student in the environment that works best for them. And for many families, me just saying, because I'm pro every kind of education that leads to better outcomes for students. If there is a setting that is better for a child, for whatever reason, they should be able to, income should never be a limiting factor for them to be able to attend that setting.
That makes sense, and I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Thank you so much, Jorge. I really appreciate it. Again, our goal is always to get multiple perspectives. We've had a lot of perspective from the other side who are against it. So thank you so much for allowing us to speak to you, being pro-school voucher, school choice, and giving parents more empowerment over their kids' education.